we need to be accountable to, and aware of our opinions and our biases, right? So it's not so much about the opinions of others and what they think about like our profession, because as trainers and assessors, you're trainers and assessors for a wide range of industries. It's not just, say, for example, one of the opinion as, a good one or a bad one, or it's everything in between, right? So it's how we teach and assess that I think is very important. And if we look at certain things like, I don't know, ethics is just one of those things that seems to be really, imposed upon us, that this is the nice thing to do. It used to be the same thing for sustainability. Well, this is the nice thing to do. But we're becoming more and more aware that we can actually turn this into a real business, where it's a lot more than that, that we can, in fact, do good and feel good about it as well, because it's something that we want to do rather than something that we have to do because, a code of ethics has been put on us, or because, this is the standard, or this is the code of practice, etc. So I don't want us to think about, I know I'm talking about ethics a lot, but where does the moderation come in? Because it comes down to the job role as well, right? So I feel like it has to tie in together nice and neat, for us to be able to implement that. Okay, so there's definitely a place for it, and it's like work health and safety. We don't want to get it to get sort of overboard and out of hand, that everything needs to be documented. We want it to be meaningful. So that's what I'm proposing here, is for us to realize certain opinions that we have about professions, and like what we can do about it as well within our own organization. So where do we start in looking at ethics? My suggestion is to actually sit down with your team, and that could be your group of assessors, trainers, and really think about the problems that are unique to your organization, to your team, to your industry. So what's really challenging, and there's going to be challenges just about anything you do, no matter what sort of organization or industry you're in. The fact that we're, utilizing resources, there's going to be some sort of impact on the environment there, even transportation to work. I mean, obviously, some of you are not, and you may be working from home, but just the fact that we're living, breathing, commuting, we are having impacts. And it's the same thing as with ethics. I mean, you got to think, why did all this ethics come about? Why is there a need for all these rules and so forth? So instead of having it imposed on us, I'm trying to say, why don't we make our own rules? Why don't we see that, hey, no matter what we do, we're going to deal with other people's money, because that's how the world works. No matter what we're going to do, we're going to have some professional service opinions and all these things. I mean, if it's a service, then obviously you're going to impact on someone else's life, no matter if that's health, childcare, providing service, which is, in law or real estate or financial service or whatever it is. If you're going to interact with somebody else, you're going to have that, you're going to have some sort of impact, no matter what that is. So you really got to see, okay, well, in your organization, then, if we're looking at an RTO or we're looking at the vet industry, then I know it doesn't seem as glamorous, but being a trainer and assessor, that's really lovely. But the thing is, it's really the assessment component that's really high risk. And that's why I'm proposing that we somehow implement the ethics that we come up with, the challenges that we have, and then have a look at like where that is for us in vet. It's like the education system, it is in the assessments. And I do apologize, I'm not probably asking a lot of questions here, but this whole thing just threw me out a little bit. So some examples for unethical behavior for assessments could be things like, taking bribes. I don't know if it's ever happened to you, but it's happened like I've got so many examples of well, we don't take bribes, obviously, so don't, but I'm saying that there are people who have offered large monetary rewards for passing, or it could be cheating, say, for example. Or as an assessor, you could be making threats if you don't do this, and something might happen, or even fraud. Okay, so that's why we have this whole conflict of interest, and we got to be really aware of that as well. So I say when it's conflict of interest, if it sort of doesn't feel right, or you're just a little bit unsure, just bring it up. And it's always best to document. So to say, like, I don't want to bring it up because then what if people think X, Y, and Z? It doesn't really matter. The fact that you brought it up, no matter how small or large, that uneasiness that you feel, by all means, bring it up, document it. And even in a diary, you can't see it, but even in a diary, just a note, that's good enough. That will hold, right? So the other thing is tick and flick. And I don't know about you, but every time I think about tick and flick, I think it's just like, it's almost like a little mozzie or a little bug that I just got to flick off. Myself, I hate bugs, by the way. I love bugs. I know what they do for the environment too. But for myself personally, like, it just doesn't feel nice, to have to think that you're assessing someone and you just need to get rid of them. Okay, so that's how it feels like. That's what it sounds like, and that's not what people want. Okay, so if you as an assessor feel that this is not very important, you just want to get rid of that assessment and just make them satisfactory or competent, then how do you think the candidates are going to feel about that? They're going to treat it the same way. So there needs to be a lot of respect, I think, for what people are gaining in terms of their qualification. And I like to think that that's the same for Excelia, that anything that you gain from us, that it really means something and it's not just a piece of paper. The other thing is being biased or discriminatory. I don't know about discriminatory, but we all have biases. Okay, so it's part of being human. To say that we are not biased, sometimes it's very subconscious what happens. We don't even know about it. So just be aware of it. It can happen. Just take, for example, if you were to hire someone, if they were from this uni or has studied under a certain teacher, as an example, or organization, like sometimes you might have these certain thoughts and biases where you're like, oh yeah, that person must be like that if they're from this uni, as an example, or from that RTO, etc., or they're from that industry or that region. We just can't help it, because that's how we make decisions quickly, and that's how, as human beings, we don't die essentially. So don't feel bad about being biased. I think it's important to be aware of it, though. Very important. Feel free to add things in here. Anything that you've actually come across, you can type that in your Q&A. But Yeah, other things could be disclosure of confidential information, and sometimes it's just not knowing, but it's not a good enough excuse. So we sometimes have trick questions in our Q&A for our course, and it's not to trick people or anything like that. It's more to sort of bring, all these things that we don't tend to see as trainers and assessors, what actually happens in real life. And the other thing is not assessing to the assessment procedures. And sometimes it's not anyone's fault, right, that this happens. Okay. Is there any questions at the moment you want to ask, if I'm going too fast, too slow, or anything like that? Sorry. Make good. Have I lost you all? Not at the moment. Thank you, Stella, for replying. Okay. So let's continue. So the proposal that I have is, once you've sat down with your team, and that could be a team of assessors, that perhaps think about what you should have on this ethics index. And we all know that if you have some sort of like improvement process, and there's like lots of audits and checklists and so forth, and you might be doing it every quarter, but you don't actually do anything about it. So very quickly, that valuable process becomes then not invaluable. It just becomes like, well, why am I doing this for? Especially if it's from your team, right? If your team has come up with this, brilliant moderation record, but it's not getting utilized, then what is the point? So instead of thinking about KPIs, which we all know is key performance indicators, what I'm proposing is thinking about PPI. Okay, so PPIs is positive performance indicators. Now, they all follow the SMART rule principles, where we want it to be achievable, but it's just a different way of thinking things. So an example I might use is, I want to lose 10 kilos, right? Not that I need to, I'm just saying, right? I just want to lose 10 kilos. That is a KPI, that's a key performance indicator. But if we're talking about like a positive performance indicator, we're talking about we want this to be meaningful and successful, and that we actually retain some sort of good behavior from it, then we've really got to think about, how am I actually losing these 10 kilos, right? So is it just starve myself and we'll get there? Or is it just, I don't know what to do to lose 10 kilos, to be honest, but am I, following a fad diet that's just not sustainable, and I've literally learned nothing from it, right? So sometimes when we're thinking about indicators, don't think of it like, let's just do everything to get there. It's more about sustainability. It's all about, did we learn the lessons that we need to learn? So sometimes we're thinking about marking. A lot of times it's like, let's just mark it really quickly. Let's just get it over and done with. Let's just push them out the window, not the window, sorry, out the door, the window. Let's just get them out. And then once again, it doesn't seem like assessing is a valuable process, because that's not how, as an organization, as an assessor, or the candidates will not see that it is a valuable process. It's more like, let's just get this done quickly, right? So I'm challenging you and RTOs to think about, well, what can you really do to basically put your money where your mouth is, that being an assessor or assessing or, gaining competency is something that is truly important, right? And it's not just about sitting there and learning about the content and, do I get it or not? Because I know that's the glamorous part, that's the great part, but all of this other very, very important aspect needs to be looked at too. So from there, if you've got a whole bunch of things that you think is really important to your organization, perhaps at that point, you can put that list together and turn those PPIs into a moderation record. Does anyone have any questions at the moment about this? Is it making sense? Yeah, it's really going to be, thanks, Chris. So do we have a guideline for relative time teaching? That's why I've got relative time, and it's going to be different for your organization. Okay, so I'm not saying that that it has to be 1-for-1. Like, for example, if we teach and it's for an hour, that it's going to be an hour's worth of assessing. There's no real guideline, but from your own organization, really. Right? So it really depends on the unit itself, and logistically, it has to work as well. So I know that there are some organizations that don't pay their assessors to assess at all. And so this is where the tick and flick comes in, which makes sense. So that's why it really is an organization thing, and it's about like management really getting involved in this as well. Okay. All right. I'd like to share with you I'm just wondering how I'm going to do this. I'd like to share a document. Are you able to see this document? This is the assessment moderation document. Just want to check if you've got that. Excellent. Thanks, Maria. I'll just make it a bit larger, but I do want to share it with you. And if you don't have it, it will be available via, oh, I'm not too sure. I think it's like a summary or something like that. But what if I just try to share it somewhere now? That'd be good. Hang on. Anyone with a link, copy the link. Let's see if this works. Oh, thank you. Can I wonder if I could type it in here? Send. Did that work by any chance? Or I'll try to put it in the chat, see if you get it. Lovely. Thank you. Okay. Okay, I can see some people on there. Did you want to say something, Stella?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So I just put that in the chat, and I can see that some are able to access it already. Let me know if you have any other questions about that, but you could pretty much download it. I do want to go through this quickly with you. I have a lot of time, but we've put a moderation record in, together as a team, and I can't seem to, you will be able to download this. So if you go File, Download, you can have that as a Word document, just like I've done there. And if you open that Word document, you might need to enable editing and also like go through it. It has like drop down menus and stuff like that. So with the moderation, like the moderation record that we've developed for our team, it really is just a guide, as I mentioned before, but it's what works for us. Okay, so it may not work for you, but it works for Excelia. And so it may work for you. But there's different methods that we might want to moderate. And moderation is just alignment of assessment decisions. It's very different, not very, it's different than validation. And sometimes people might ask, well, why do we need to moderate? Well, I think moderation is probably one of the most important processes to have, because we've all agreed that you know, assessing is so important, because that's what determines whether a learner has gained their qualification or if they're competent or not competent. Not because they attended your class or didn't attend your class. That's just different behavior, that's different. But moderation in itself will, if done properly, will capture so many things that could be ineffective or wrong with, no, not wrong, but ineffective with the assessment process and tools. So I always say the best processes in an organization is one that overlaps. And so if you're moderating, you will essentially capture all these other bits and pieces that will end up being in a validation as well. But it's more focused on people, because we talk about ensuring that other people are well, but what about the assessor? What about the people assessing? What about your team? They are also very, very important too. So if they're not doing well, you're not going to expect a good outcome for your candidates either. Okay, so if you have any questions about this record, let me know, but I'm just going to go through it quickly with you. A blind moderation is just essentially, now and again, you might have 2 assessors or 3 assessors or whoever it is, and they can't come to, they just assess the same assessment. And then at the end of it, they'll go, well, what did you get? Why did you get this? What happened there? Et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Now, the purpose is also very important. And I'd like to see, really, every time there's a new assessor that comes on board, that you give them a chance to be able to go, well, to moderate. Now, did I do this right? Am I assessing this too hard, too easy, whatever it is? Okay, and you can schedule it, of course, just like a moderation. If it's a new tool, if it's a new procedure, it should be moderated. Okay, because we all have different ideas about things because of our biases, right? So whether you have studied a lot, if you're experienced a lot, doesn't mean that your decisions are going to be better or worse. And this is the thing with moderation, it's not about sort of, something being better or worse. It's moderating. And I like to think of it, moderating is an alignment of decisions, right? So it's not about, oh, this assessor provides really, 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 really great feedback. And this one's like really, really, not so great. It's not about that at all. It's about aligning, right? Your assessment decision. So I kind of think of it like your back. It just needs to be cracked sometimes, aligning that back essentially, so that whichever assessor they get, they're going to get like this aligned decision, and it's not sort of like potluck about it. So that's why we've got very first and foremost, we've got, is the assessment free from bias? And whether we agree or not, I really want you to dig deep and think about, does your industry have? And sometimes we also have our own pressures on ourselves as well, or what we expect from other people. And it could be, say, for example, you've had a star student and then they didn't do very well. And then, you might, or you're expecting them to do a lot better. I don't know. So it really depends. Really depends. Sorry about that. Okay, so with the rules of evidence and the principles of assessment, this will be in your stock standard validation as well. Look, if you're an assessor or assessors in your team don't know about this, they should. I think hands down, it's very important. I'm not going to elaborate on it because it's something that I think everyone should know about. There are other things such as, with the expected turnaround timeframes, every organization's different. With Excelia, we know that we want to have our assessments, assessed within 3 to 5 days. That's what we want. 3 or less attempts by the candidate. And mind you, these yes, no, it doesn't matter, right? It's not a tick and flick document for us to say, well, we don't want tick and flick, and then all of a sudden we create a tool that's all tick and flick. Then that seems very hypocritical of us. So what we wanted was, even if there's a yes, if there's a no, if there's 10 no's or whatever it is, it really doesn't matter. The idea is that you do this moderation, that you provide this opportunity for real value add to your assessors. It's not about crucifying anyone, but you want to understand the reasons behind the issues that are happening. Is the assessment conducted under normal conditions? I think you know what I mean there. Sometimes there's going to be room for holistic assessments. And has there been discussions with the candidate? And I don't mean like to reprimand them. I mean, have we reached out to them to see if they've really understood this, and have we provided them with the support that they need? There's nothing worse to then just go like, everyone's just under test conditions. That's it, and not provide any real support. And that happens. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it can happen. Is the feedback clear and easy to understand? And could we be more sensitive? I think sometimes we're delivering or training, then we are more sensitive, we are more professional. But it's not only that. You've got to think about, well, what about our cohort, the people that are getting feedback? They're getting told like, this is not great, or that needs to be fixed, or whatever it is. It's not, we've got to understand how they're feeling emotionally, psychologically, and even professionally. Like, what are you saying, right? So they could be already very defensive to our feedback, and it's got nothing to do with us. But that's why Perhaps using videos would be a good idea, or a phone call would be also really nice to provide feedback. And there's a whole bunch of free to educators anyway, teachers and so forth, to be able to use video. We use Loom, and that's free. And it's just keep it under 5 minutes where possible, and give that video feedback instead. Please, if you have any questions, put that in the questions and answers, and I'll hope to go through it if I haven't already, or if I'm not doing it already. All of this is quite clear to understand, I think. Procedures easy, and tasks easy to implement. Several times over, I think for the Cert 4 in TAE, we've looked at certain units that are actually difficult to implement. And from there, we've created case studies to help our learners. And that's why you'll see later on, we don't really care about what other people do. And I don't mean that in a sort of closed mind way. I mean that sometimes we put way too much effort for our clients, and that's what we call them, clients. We don't call them students or learners, because like that's important to us, and that might not be something that you're able to do. But I think if it's important to the team, that's what we're going to do, because that feels right to us. Okay, so it comes down to with this moderation and ethics, it comes down to values. So what do you and your team value? Okay, so it's not going to be the same for everyone, but you'll notice that if your values don't align together, then that's why people get divorced. That's why people go to a different company or whatever it is, until you find the people that you align with value wise, right? So these other things here, we have quite a few systems, and this is not going away, right? So information systems and ethics actually is something that's really huge right now, and security. So you want to be thinking about, sometimes you're just unable to see all the actual learning systems, management systems, and so forth that your students might be seeing, your clients might be seeing. So it's something that you might want to be looking at constantly as well. So I know we put this down here, but I'd like to think that our values, which is we came up as a team, very similar to this moderation template, it wasn't something that was sort of imposed on us. It was like, well, what do we agree with as a team, right? What's important to us? And if I look at this, I know exactly what's going on there, but it might not have that same meaning to you, because we talk about it, we elaborate on it, we give examples of what we mean to each of these things. And it's a compass, right, for each one of us as an Excellian, that sometimes we're going to get lost. I mean, sometimes we're going to be working from home. We don't see each other all the time. We don't hear what each other are saying and doing, because that's how we learn from each other, and that's how we align most of the time as individuals within organizations. But Excelia has always been an online RTO, so way before COVID. So sorry, I got two people with their hands up, and someone to ask a question about something. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that use it as a compass, right? So if these particular, like, you're not sure what to do, sometimes I'm not sure. I mean, I've been training and assessing forever, but these are the things that I'm going to know, well, this is what my organization agrees to do, and therefore this is what I'm going to do. Yeah. So we have, did someone want to ask something? Stella or Manju?
No, I'm right at the moment.
Okay, excellent.
At the moment, thank you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. All right. Well, that's it from me. I do suggest that if you can, to really go back to your organization and think about how you may, put together the issues and problems that you have within your organization and what's important to you, in terms of if you're not sure of how to get this document in terms of with your team, just think about all the unethical things that can or may happen and then switch it around, and it's literally the opposite of it. That's what you want to be promoting. Okay, and then come up with a document similar to this. So think about what, areas that have aligned, anything that's misaligned. Once again, it is coming to the middle. Okay, it's not about this is so great, everybody clap your hands, this is so not great, right? It's not about that. It's about how can we help our assessors, our team, so that they can be better for our learners. Okay, that's it from me. Thank you so much for attending, and
Thank you.